So Tna Impact was a tape show from Atlanta, Georgia. And the show starts off with Hogan. And Hogan says that an act of God prevented him from hitting Bully Ray in the back of the head with the hammer. And as you know, I didn't care about last week's ending, but this act of God part, what did a lightning bolt stop Hogan from hitting Bully Ray? What? So Hogan says that all 12 men for the Bound for Glory series will be decided, and that Samoa Joe, Hernandez, and Jay Bradley are already in. And Hogan says that the last two winners of the Bound for Glory series, Jeff Hardy and Robert Roode, have automatic bids. So Hogan calls out last year's winner, Jeff Hardy, and Hardy comes out. And Hardy says that he is tired of the hammer and sick of Aces and Eights. And he says he's going to win the Bound for Glory series and go on to Bound for Glory and win the World Heavyweight Championship. And then Robert Roode comes out. And he goes into his spiel about being the longest reigning, most dominant TNA World Champion ever. And he mentions that he was the first winner of the Bound for Glory series and that he's going for his second win. Hogan says that next week is open fight night and that the fans will be able to decide by either calling in and voting or going online on who will get to call out someone, either Hardy or Roode. And Roode says that he hopes that the fans will vote for him so that he can call out Hardy and kick his ass. But then Hardy tells Roode to kick his ass now. And then Aces and Eights come out. Bully Ray, Wes Briscoe, and Garrett Bischoff. And Bully Ray wants to know why everyone is so mad at each other. He says that it doesn't matter who wins the Bound for Glory series because he is the champion. But then Bully Ray wants Hogan to tell him why there are no members of Aces and Eights in the Bound for Glory series. And Hogan tells Bully Ray that there is one spot for Aces and Eights in the Bound for Glory series, and that the members will have to fight each other in a battle royal for that spot. And then Bully Ray says that everyone else in the Bound for Glory series is a target, including Roode and Hardy. And then he orders Garrett Bischoff and Wes Briscoe to go after Roode and Hardy. But Roode and Hardy quickly dispose of Bischoff and Briscoe. But then Roode hits Hardy from behind and leaves. Okay, it's an odd segment, but I guess it accomplished what it needed to do. It promoted a fan vote for Open Fight Night, and it settled Aces and Eights' participation in the Bound for Glory series. So then we see Christopher Daniels and Kazarian backstage, and they are basically talking about their Bound for Glory series qualifying match against James Storm and Gunner. And Christopher Daniels is sitting at a piano hitting the keys. Okay. So then we have the Bound for Glory series qualifying match, James Storm and Gunner against Bad Influence. Decent match. The match ends with James Storm preparing to deliver the super kick on Kazarian, but then Daniels hits Storm from behind with one of the title belts. And Kazarian rolls Storm up with an inside cradle and gets the pin. Your winners are Bad Influence, and they go on to the Bound for Glory series. So then we see Crimson backstage. And he is asked why he's there. And Crimson says that it has been a year since he has been on Impact, and he can't believe that he would even be asked that. And then he leaves. So then we see Velvet Sky backstage. And Velvet is holding a manila envelope in her hand, and she says that this is a present for Mickie James. And she says that it's going to make everyone happy. It's going to make her happy. It's going to make Mickie happy. It's going to make everyone happy. So then we have Crimson versus dumbass Joseph Park. Crimson comes to the ring and gets on the mic, and he points out two specific numbers, 470 and 12. He says that those two numbers have been consuming him. 470, a reference to the number of days that he was undefeated, and the number 12 being the number of months that he has been away from TNA since the end of his so-called undefeated streak. I've never put that much value into his streak because during that time, if I remember, he went weeks without wrestling on TV. And if he had wrestled every week, then that would be a different outlook. But the fact that he didn't wrestle every week, I don't put too much value into the streak. And it's over, so why are we still talking about it? So he says that he is ready for the opportunity to be in the Bound for Glory series, and he calls out dumbass Joseph Park. So-so match. The match ends with Crimson slamming Park with a variation of a spine buster, and then Crimson waits in the corner as Park struggles to get to his feet in the opposite corner. Park gets to his feet and Crimson charges. Park moves out of the way and rolls up Crimson for the 3. And the winner is dumbass Joseph Park. So this is the reason that you brought back Crimson, TNA? Wow. So then we see Mickie James backstage talking to herself as she looks in the mirror, and she briefly mentions that she is looking forward to what Velvet Sky has for her, and then she leaves. So then Velvet Sky comes to the ring, and she says that since she lost the women's championship to Mickie James, their friendship has basically been questionable. So she calls out Mickie James so that she can present the solution to that problem. And Mickie James comes out. And Mickie continues the sarcastic slant by saying that she may be the women's champion, but Velvet is the woman of the month. So then Velvet removes a piece of paper from the manila envelope that she has been holding and gives it to Mickie. And Velvet tells Mickie that it is a doctor's clearance and that she wants a rematch. And then Mickie basically says that the letter is fake. But then she points out that if it were real, why would the letter state that she was cleared yesterday when her knee is still injured now? And then Mickie kicks Velvet in her left knee, slams her head into the mat a couple of times, and then she puts Velvet in some sharpshooter face lock submission maneuver before the referees come down and break it up. Thus, it is now complete. Mickie has finally broken through. And I can honestly say I'm actually looking forward to this rematch. You have Mickey's mentally unstable heel presentation contrasting with Velvet's desire to overcome the knee injury and attempt to regain the title. I thought that it was done very well. I can even give Velvet credit for holding up her end. I mean, Mickie has been fantastic with the lead up to the heel turn, and I'm actually looking forward to this match. So then we have Matt Morgan backstage. And Morgan says that Sting could not make him submit, tap out, or pin him. No, Matt. Sting couldn't do any of those things to you because you were passed out. Morgan wonders why he has to jump through hoops in order to qualify for the Bound for Glory series. So then we have another Bound for Glory series qualifying match. It's a 4-way match. Matt Morgan versus Magnus versus Rob Terry versus Kenny King. Another so-so match. Magnus wins with a Michinoku driver on Kenny King. And I think that Magnus showing in the Bound for Glory series will ultimately determine how serious of a push he's going to get for future championship contender consideration. This is the man that should be wearing the TV title right now. But instead you have... Never mind. Never mind. Why isn't the television championship around Magnus's waist instead of being in limbo because of some creative bullshit? So then we see Eric Young backstage, and Young plugs his Animal Planet show. What is it? Off the Hook Extreme Fishing, I think it is. Briefly talks about his Bound for Glory qualifying series match against Austin Aries, and then he runs to a bathroom stall and vomits. Eric Young. So then Sting comes out. Sting gets on the mic and says that in the year since being inducted into the TNA Hall of Fame, he has had to deal with the quote-unquote deception known as Aces and Eights. And Sting acknowledges losing at Slammiversary to Bully Ray and never having a shot at the World Heavyweight Championship ever again. And Sting says that when he needed help during the match against Bully Ray, no one came to help him. And he says that Aces and Eights is like a family. And then Sting repeats the word family several times. And then he says that he needs to create his own family. That family being a new main event mafia to go up against Aces and Eights. I'm going to keep this simple and say no. Don't do this. Please don't do this. So then we have another Bound for Glory qualifying match. Bound for Glory series qualifying match. Austin Aries versus Eric Young. And before the match, we see a comedy skit with Eric Young and ODB. Basic shtick with these two. Except for this. ODB mentions that they are still the tag team champions and that they haven't defended the titles in 6 months. And Eric Young says, yes, they're still the champs. Well, actually, it's been 14 months. Their last title defense, if that's what you want to call it, was at Lockdown 2012 against Sarita and Rosita. So it's been 14 months. But the fact that the women's tag team championship was acknowledged is very intriguing. Was this just a cheap line for a comedy skit? Or was it foreshadowing of the women's tag team championship being utilized again? Interesting. Decent match. The match ends with Eric Young delivering a belly-to-belly suplex on Austin Aries, and then he kisses ODB and goes to the top rope. But Aries lunges forward and lands on the top rope, which causes Young to lose his balance and fall to the mat. Then Aries catches him with the corner drop kick and then gives Young the brain buster. Aries gets the pin. Your winner is Austin Aries. And this was just another Bound for Glory series qualifying match that really was unnecessary. I mean, did Aries need to qualify? I mean, you're not going to have a Bound for Glory series without him, just as I said last week with Samoa Joe. But now a very interesting situation has been created. You have Rude and Aries in the Bound for Glory series. You also have Christopher Daniels and Kazarian in the Bound for Glory series. What does that do for the tag team championship situation? Because news has come out that the tag team of Rude and Aries is going to be de-emphasized. They're going to be competing in singles matches and house shows as well as the Bound for Glory series. So who will James Storm and Gunner be defending the World Tag Team Championship against? I think this would be the right time for Aces and Eights to challenge them. And I'm thinking Doc and Mike Knox as a team. Not Garrett Bischoff and Wes Briscoe. But they can't be the only team. And once again, this goes back to obviously an issue that I've discussed several times about the lack of tag teams. And this is precisely a situation that I knew was going to happen. And that's why the lack of effort of TNA to go out and get teams, so that when a situation like this comes along where two of your teams are going to be dissolved because they're going to be involved in a singles match presentation, you don't have any teams to make up for that. So I guess you would have to start out with Aces and Eights, Doc and Mike Knox as a team, but then this would be the time to go out and get a team. You don't have to go out and get 4 or 5 teams. Just get one team and then slowly bring in another. Build it back up. So then we have Aces and Eights backstage. And Bully Ray has decided that Mr. Anderson will be the one to compete in the Bound for Glory series. So that obviously means that the other members are going to do some pseudo jobbing. However, Doc does not like the idea. Bully Ray gets everyone to agree quickly. Doc agrees, but he's not happy about it. So then we have Chris Sabin backstage. And Sabin talks about being the underdog and, making the comeback after 2 years of being out of action. And he wonders what would have happened if he didn't tear his left ACL and it was just his right knee that was injured. He says that when he came back last year, he had 7 matches. One of those matches was against Austin Aries, who was the X Division champion at the time. And Sabin speculates that if he had beaten Aries for the X Division Championship, he would have had the opportunity to exchange the X Division title for a world title shot. And Saban doesn't know if he should give up the X Division title for a shot at the world title. Now, TNA has announced that on July 18th, there will be a special edition of Impact. It will be Destination X. So it's clear that the whole point of having this is to have Saban give up the title, the X Division title, and pursue the World Heavyweight Championship, as they did last year. Well, I'm still figuring why you would have Saban give up the X Division title to go for a world title that he's not going to win. I mean, when July 18th comes around, Saban won't even have had the title for 2 months. I mean, when Aries did the same thing last year, he had been X Division champion for like 10 months. So it made sense because he had already had the X Division championship for so long. So it made sense for him to give it up and go for the world title, which he eventually would win. But for Saban to have held it under 2 months and then give it up, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, the whole point of this special theme Destination X version of Impact is going to be centered around Saban making the decision to give up the X Division title and go for the world title, but we know he's not winning the world title. So it's a peculiar situation, but so then we have the Aces and Eights Battle Royal to determine who competes in the Bound for Glory series. And since Bully Ray decided that Mr. Anderson would be the representative, you knew what was going to happen. Each member did his pseudo-jobbing and allowed himself to be eliminated. And then it came down to Mr. Anderson and Doc left. So then Doc slowly walks to the ropes and puts one leg over the top rope, but then he stops. And he steps back into the ring. And the other members of Aces and Eights are yelling at him, wondering what he's doing. Mr. Anderson is yelling at him, and then Doc hits Mr. Anderson and starts hammering away at him. But then Mr. Anderson counters and knees him in the midsection, and he throws Doc over the top rope. Mr. Anderson wins. And then the other members of Aces and Eights are all over Doc as they leave the area. Yes, this whole thing was silly. But Doc's resistance and reluctance angle may create an interesting storyline within a storyline. So then we see Quentin Jackson and Kurt Angle backstage, and Jackson wants to know what Angle meant when he said that Jackson wasn't ready. You know, I guess going back to last week when Angle telling Jackson that he wasn't ready and that, he's in Angle's world. And Jackson wants to know, well, what did you mean? And Angle tells him that he needs to learn how to wrestle. And Angle wished him luck on his next MMA fight, and they shake hands, and Jackson wishes Angle luck in his match against AJ Styles. So the transition from last week, the stare down, to this week, the mutual admiration. Okay. So then we see Aces and Eights backstage, and the members are still beefing over Doc's actions. And Bully Ray says to Doc that they had to stick with the plan, and that he appreciated Doc's passion, but they had to stick to the plan. And Doc apologizes, but then he promises to take out AJ Styles. And Bully Ray tells him to get it done. So then we have the main event, another Bound for Glory Series qualifying match. Kurt Angle versus AJ Styles. Good match. Yes, I know some people are tired of the matchup, but still a good match. The highlight of the match being Angle's overhead belly to belly on Styles outside of the ring. So the match ends with Kurt Angle attempting a German suplex on Styles off the top rope, but Styles lands on his feet. He kicks Angle and DDTs him in the corner. Then you had Aces and Eights, Doc and Knox hit the ring. Styles throws Doc out of the ring and Pele kicks Knox. But then Mr. Anderson hits the ring and Angle confronts him. He knocks Mr. Anderson down, but then Styles comes up behind on Angle and rolls him up for the pin. Your winner, AJ Styles. And then Aces and Eights attack Angle 3-on-1. Styles has already left. And then Quentin Jackson comes to the ring and with a chain in his hand, and Anderson and Knox bail. And it's interesting how Jackson has the very pleasant courtesy to turn Doc around first before hitting him, instead of just hitting him from behind. And as Jackson turns Doc around, Doc is able to get out of the ring. And then Angle and Jackson hold off Aces and Eights, and the show ends. Now, I still don't know how Quentin Jackson is going to fit into TNA. But what happens if this increasing influence of Bellator on TNA continues? What happens if Jackson figures more into TNA storylines? What happens when Muhammad Lawal finally shows up and gets involved in TNA storylines? What happens if other Bellator fighters are forced upon TNA? What happens? I'm Tazmart 2002, and that was my TNA Impact Analysis for June 13th, 2013. If you're listening to me on YouTube, please leave your comments below. Click the like or dislike button, and if you subscribe, I would really appreciate it. I'm an administrator on the Wrestling News Talk Facebook page, which is run by Andre Corbeil. So if you would like to leave comments below, please do so. You can click the like button if you like what I've been saying. If you have any questions for me about TNA or wrestling in general, you can reach me on Twitter, Tazmark2002. That's TAZMARK 2002. And if your comments exceed the 140, get at me with an email, Tazmark2002@gmail.com. I thought it was a solid show. Solid show. Speaking of Andre Corbeil, and if you haven't checked him out, check out his YouTube channel. He did a video about the possibility of Hogan getting a title shot at Bound for Glory. And if you haven't seen the video, do it. It is very good. I noticed a couple of comments underneath the video, and I've heard this from others as well. How is Hogan going to get a title shot at Bound for Glory when he is not even in the Bound for Glory series? This is Hogan we're discussing. Hogan, who knocked down 4 members of Aces and Eights with 4 punches total at last year's Bound for Glory. Hogan, who along with Sting turned back all 8 members of Aces and Eights. Hogan, when physically engaging with Bully Ray, sent Bully Ray running out of the ring. This is Hogan. The impossible becomes possible. The abnormal becomes normal. And the ridiculous becomes commonplace. Remember that. I'm Tazmark 2002. Gone.